Hello, Awaken Live. We're back with our marriage series, part 5. And our question is, what do you do when you feel your family doesn't support your spouse or the decisions you're making? How does this grow your marriage?
I feel like you need to clarify what family means.
I think it means the extended family. This is not my question. So I think this means when it says doesn't support your spouse, I'm assuming your extended family does not support your spouse.
Okay.
You want me to start?
Yeah, sure.
I think that becoming one takes time. And I think, it's that verse that talks about you become man and woman and you are one, right? I think that takes time. It doesn't just happen the day you get married, that you instantly become one. I think it evolves over time. And so I think that takes you learning to put them first. I think for so long it was your extended family was your priority. It was the people that you kind of
Are you
put,
saying to me or both of us?
both of our families,
Yeah.
both of our extended families were the people we put as priority. Their
Well,
opinions
that's natural.
mattered the most.
Yeah.
That's for so long, that's how it was. And then you come together and you're supposed to just instantly be one and all of your decisions be one. And that's just not how it is. It's you're becoming one. And I think that means that you learn. And I
Mhm.
think it takes a lot of mess. And I think it takes a lot of practice, to be honest. And I think it takes things coming up that makes you have to put your husband first or your wife first over your family. And I think that evolves over time, where then obviously that person becomes your priority. And I think having kids obviously really speeds that becoming one process up to where you're your own family unit. But even that took time. We had both had different backgrounds. We grew up different ways. Our parents parented differently, and we had to meld that together into what we wanted our family unit to look like.
Mhm.
So I think all of that blending of being one takes time. That would be my thoughts and opinions about that.
Mhm. Yes. I think that. I think that first. I think first again a reframing of the question probably is how I'd first answer that in that, or at least setting the stage for how I'd answer the question. So that would be kind of looking at just like all, your whole life, and just kind of like what that actually looks like and where you fit in for the different seasons of your life with the different generations that you're a part of. And so what that means is I guess the way I've always looked at it is, you know when you were born, you were kind of dropped in, the river over here, if you will. And then, 20 or 30 years, down the river were your parents. And then 20 or 30 years, before them was your grandparents, and so on. And then through life, you're moving down this river, and you're taking on these different seasons, and everyone's just kind of moving. And then 20 or 30 years, after you were born, then comes your kids, and then eventually will come your grandkids, and so until you fall off and you pass away. And so, and there's so much that comes with like each season, and there's so much difference that comes with each season. And so I think and the first thing is to just understand that there's definitely going to be exactly what this question talks to, is that your parents and other people around you, your cousins, your siblings, are all going to have times where they just completely disagree with what you and your spouse are doing.
Mm-hmm.
That is entirely natural and part of the process, part of the process of, like you said, becoming one, but also each person growing, into their place in the family. There's and their place in the season of life in the family even. So, for instance, yeah, like you said, you started under your parents' roof, and Ronald Rolheiser said it the best, and that's where he actually talks about this concept of home. And from age 0 to age 13, your parents are building this what your concept of what home is, right? And that is what's safe and what's secure, and how the world works, and your place in it a bit, and you have this nice feeling of home and security as you're learning. But then through nature's way of hormones and everything else that comes with, being a teenager and adolescence, that feeling of what you've known as home all of a sudden doesn't feel right anymore. And then you start this long journey from age 13 to whatever it is, 13 to 20 to 25 to 30, 35, whatever, to where you are then trying to look for your place in the world and your home with your spouse and with the family you build with your spouse. And that becomes your new home. And that process, there's a lot of uncomfortability that comes in that entire process just to get to the place where you are leaving your family of origin to then setting up a new home with your spouse. But even from that day where you got married, then there's this, now you've started on this whole other journey where you're taking your place in that stream that I was talking about. But then, everyone has to kind of move down the line. And so as you look to your parents and where they're at, and they've got to kind of accept the changes that come with you going out, building your own family. And all of a sudden now for them, right, there's not just, they're not that primary family anymore for you. Your immediate family is now your primary family and your primary concern. And so things have to change and evolve for them, and they don't like that. That's not.
Yeah, I think there's a grief in that. And I now having kids, I understand that there is going to be grief no matter what.
Yeah, I think we're trying to look ahead and understand that our, especially our parents,
there's a grief in that you were the family unit, and then now you're not the main family unit. There will be a grief.
There's an evolution.
I remember, again, intentional parenting, which we referenced in a video before. If you haven't checked it out, you should. But they talk a lot about even letting go well when you have adult children. And they talk about that they always can have a key to your house, but you don't have a key to theirs. And just as a metaphor, basically as a metaphor, that you now know that they have a boundary that you shouldn't go and cross and go in. Like,
you need to let them build their own life.
Yeah. But they are always welcome to come back and get advice from you and all of those things. And I loved the beauty of that analogy. Obviously, I still think there will be a grief to that, but I do think that that's something that has to kind of be done as well.
Yeah. So I think to go back to the original thing I was kind of saying is just to kind of reframe, to frame like the position through which to answer this question is that you should expect that everyone that you have loved, that you get advice from extended family, from your parents and your siblings, they are going to sometimes very strongly disagree with the decisions that you and your spouse are making. And that is a natural part of life. And it's healthy in a way. It's part of the evolution. It's part of two people together having to kind of question the things that they grew up with, and then kind of break that apart on each side, and then reassemble a life from the pieces of that. And again, it's so first going into this, I think you should just know that yes, there will be disagreement, and so that it's totally a normal part of life. You're not doing anything wrong if your parents or siblings or whoever else are disagreeing with you. And that's, I think, what a lot of people struggle with in the beginning. It's just that, man, like, well, my parents disagree, so I must be doing something wrong. And that's not necessarily the case. That it's also, should you listen to your parents and should you heed advice from other people? Yes, you absolutely should. And you should definitely, walk through, if your parents or someone is questioning a decision you're making, you should definitely be processing that and really take heed to that. But it doesn't mean that you're in the wrong if you're going against what other people say. The two, at the end of the day, it's the two of you who are married who are kind of crafting a new life. So yeah, anyway, that's how I would kind of, I think, just set the stage for the natural flow of things. For how to handle that, I think that from like what I said, I think you've got to kind of have grace on all sides. So I think I think that first you do need to understand that, again, your parents again are 20 or 30 years ahead of you, and that you will go through the same things that they are. Your kids will eventually be bucking the values that you hold dear, and
Mm-hmm.
be going against the things that you think they're crazy. Like they will be doing the same thing that you are kind of in the position of doing with your extended family, your parents and siblings. So I think you have to have a grace in how you deal with that. But I think that, trying to clearly communicate,
Mm-hmm.
the why and the heart behind the decision that you're making,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think goes a long way. Like, hey, I understand that you think that we are doing it wrong and that we shouldn't take this job here or we shouldn't move here, but we feel that it is the right thing for us because XYZ. And we
Mm-hmm.
have thought about it, we prayed about it, we have, um, you know, this is the reasoning for why we've got there. We hear you, we hear what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
but this is the way that we just feel driven and we're going to go do this. And
Yeah, I feel like I can really only speak obviously from the wife perspective. And I think when you marry, it becomes God and your husband who you answer to. And I think as a professional people pleaser, before I went through some really hard stuff, which some of Awaken team knows because, or Awaken followers know because they've been to the retreats and stuff. But before that, I think it was really hard for me not to try and please everyone, and especially my family and extended family. And I think it was really hard for me to learn that I answered to God and you in the end. And it took a lot of growing and a lot of pain and a lot of hardship for me to get to that place. So I think, yeah, having grace for yourself, having grace for your family members, but also remembering that you have become one with this person, and God and your husband is who you answer to. And you're paving a new path, and it's not the same path as your parents. It's not the same path as your sister or your brother. It's a path that is individually for you guys. And I think that that takes being able to stand firm in that, and being able to say, yeah, no, this is what we really feel like the Lord's telling us, and stand firm and not worry so much about pleasing everyone around you, but really worry about pleasing the Lord and your husband and your own family unit. Um, and I think over time, it takes your other extended family time to adjust and let go. And so I think having grace for them, and it will evolve, and um, it will grow in a more I guess healthy way. In some ways it just will take some time, but I think standing firm, I think something that the Lord kept speaking to me over and over again in a time where maybe we weren't really following what my parents approved of at the time, or my family approved of at the time. And I just kept hearing, be still and stand firm from the Lord. And I think I didn't do that perfectly, but I really tried to do that. Definitely didn't do it messy free. Um, but I think that that was really important for me and in my growth to know that even my family, I can't seek to please above God. So, yeah,
yeah, this is a hard question to answer because
absolutely.
there's a lot, there's so many layers that goes into this question.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in the end, it echo, like the answer to this question, I think goes, you almost look back through all the videos we've done. Yeah, it's about two people coming together as individuals with individual family histories,
Mm-hmm.
and working through that as you build a home together as two individual people as one.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is kind of encompassed in this question of like,
Mm-hmm.
because that is just at every step is going to be a hard, there's just going to be pressure. There's external pressure, and you're not talking about just from strangers. You're talking about from the people who
Mm-hmm.
built your early worldview.
Mm-hmm.
So these are your parents. These are the people and also sacrificed so much for you to
Mm-hmm.
be able to be where you are.
Yeah.
And so it's so difficult to go against, their advice or what they want. But you only have one life to live, just like they only have one life to live. And um, you can't live your life for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Even if that is your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it'll be the same thing for your kids. Like, you can't
Yeah.
live your life for your kids either.
Hmm.
And, that's something we've really tried to
Yeah, we're
also,
gonna struggle with probably.
although it will not be easy.
Hmm.
We can already feel it coming,
Hmm.
but, but we also know that we cannot do that. We
Hmm.
can't have our identity in being our kids' parents.
Yeah.
That is an element of who we are,
Hmm.
but that's why we are always trying to still cultivate and build the other parts of us,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. You've always been really adamant that we make sure we invest our hearts in other things of the kingdom, not just our kids. And not that the kids are the priority, because they are, but that isn't our sole everything,
Mhm.
so that when they are grown and when it's time to let go, we will have other ways that we have invested in God's kingdom that we can continue to invest
Mhm.
in his
Yeah, we
kingdom.
don't try to live vicariously through them. We
Mm.
don't hang on to everything they're doing. We are here to try to assist them to build their own life,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's we're trying to set ourselves up that way.
There will still be a grief for
But it's
us.
not going to
Yeah.
be. Yeah, it's not easy.
And I think, like you're saying, we're all made up of humans. So there will be mess, there will be conflict, there will be expectations not met, there will be pain and suffering and hardship. That is just life, and that's just living here on this earth and being humans. And I think you just have to try and take each step, each day, really listen to the Lord, and also have a lot of grace for yourself and for others.
Yeah. Yep. And I think, I'm just trying to think through this too. I think also not being afraid of dealing with things too, because so in the question exactly, right? That's where, it's like, what happens when your, you know, extended family doesn't like your spouse,
Mm,
um, or agree with what you're doing,
mm,
and to take that specific question and even go down that, like, I think that's where, if I'm sitting there and my parents fully disagree with what don't like you or that, then I think that it is not helpful to kind of just stand here in the middle and try to shield either direction, but instead to have a relationship where I can bring how, that to you and talk through that and come up with a way to, um, just have that integrated into our marriage, I
mm,
guess. What I mean, what I am kind of in a roundabout way saying is, I think that it's unhealthy when, like, you know, one person, the husband is hearing stuff from their family about what should be done, but they don't talk to that about their wife. And the wife is hearing this. That's a divisive thing to be able to
yeah.
have in your marriage. So I think a healthy way to deal with it is for you, even if they're very hard questions, like, hey, look, my family thinks you, you know, drink too much. I mean, something crazy like that, right? Or they don't think you work hard enough, or they don't think you care for me in the way that they think I deserve. Those are all, like, very real things that extended family members and parents could say. And I think being able to have a relationship where you could go to your spouse and say, hey, this is what my parents are thinking. And, being able to talk through that and not have some big explosion happen, but be able to
Hmm.
just kind of, is there merit in what those people are saying? Is there
Hmm.
merit in what your parents are saying?
Hmm.
And be self-aware enough to unpack that
Hmm.
and then deal with it. And then, incorporate the bits of truth that there might be into your lives,
Hmm.
and discard the rest and charge it forward,
Hmm.
you know?
And I think that is even answers the last part of it, is how does that grow your marriage? I think that's how it grows your marriage.
Yeah.
That you bring it to each other, you talk it through, you grow from it. There's going to be pain from it, of course, um, but yeah, and you take it to the Lord, and
Yeah. But I think, again, it comes back to that place of being able to have a relationship where you can speak to your spouse about anything.
mm-hmm,
You can do that respectfully and honestly. You
mm-hmm,
don't have to protect your spouse from something because they'll freak out on you.
yeah,
Like, that's when you have a relationship like that, then all of this, so much becomes easier. But this specifically, it's like,
mm-hmm,
you know, if I can tell you, hey, look, my parents think that you are too emotional and you're taking something personally. Um, or something like that, and I can talk to you about that, and you don't hold the grudge against them, then we can have a functional, marriage that keeps growing. But if every time anybody, my parents or someone's, says something, and then there's not the ability to talk that out, then you just have that situation where there's just division and tension building within the marriage from external forces.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, one of the most important things is, again, just to be able to let the pressure off from those important relationships in each other's lives, parents, siblings, by having healthy communication and having a humility to be able to handle that, handle exterior criticisms that are hopefully from a place of love. Hopefully those criticisms are coming from a place of love, and of your parents or your siblings wanting the best for you. But yeah, being able to mine through that for any amounts of truth you can find, and then moving forward and letting what doesn't apply go, and integrating what does apply, and then just going forward, and then not apologizing for it, and just but still doing that in love and in respect and honor as much as possible, which is not always easy. I've struggled with that for sure. So yeah, I don't process this particular thing very well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all a work in progress, and it's humans, and we're all messy, and we're have a grace for each other. And yeah, I think it takes on a different, it's a messy thing. Relationships are always messy, and you just have to know that and work hard to have health yourself and do what you can to grow and love and all of those things. For sure. I think this being our last video, one thing that I think that I didn't feel like we mentioned in any of the series was our goal setting. And so just to cap it off, do you want to talk a little bit about that, since it was really your thing? But I think that that's an important part of our relationship, and how we keep it healthy is how we set our goals.
I mean, yeah, we basically just try to look at, the life we're trying to build together on different time frames, and then, set a goal. So the shortest time frame being a year. So we'll usually go away for a couple of days and then try to map out, okay, what's important for us for this year? What do we want to do for this year? And it's had several things on it, like, getting some business stuff sorted out, getting that stuff sorted. Yeah. Moving to Bend was one of them.
I think family health was some of them too. Those were some goals of ours, is having family extended and within ourselves, family health.
Yes, trying to reconciliation was part of it. Has been a goal of ours, of just reconciliation with one side of the family or the other, and which has been important. Moving to Bend,
writing a book.
For you, writing a book for sure.
We did a marriage book too.
Right.
It's our goal. It's on our life goal.
Yes. We're at years, though. We're talking about years. So first, starting with years, yeah, and they can be anything. I mean, they can be emotional. They can be like a financial goal. They could be where you want to live, a fitness goal. I mean, anything. Just having something to kind of shoot at that's a shared vision for each other. And then the next one out, it's like 5 years. Okay, in the next 5 years, what incorporates into our life in 5 years, and then a decade. So it's like, and then the last one being lifetime. Like, what do we want to do in our life? And as the years have passed, that list, kind of gets to, what do we want to make sure we do at the different seasons of our life, before we get too old to do certain things.
Yeah, I think we have trips on some of them, like some life trips that we want, trips with the kids singly that we want to do.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably more a 5-year one, but yeah.
Yeah, and then even what's super helpful in that is that it just helps you to frame things, and it helps to shine a spotlight on the partnership aspect of building a life together.
Yeah, so absolutely.
And and then it highlights things like it makes it so that it's a little more difficult for life to just pass you by and you don't even notice. And for instance, we know that this next decade for us, really for like 2020 to 2030 is going to be super important for our kids, because we've got Gracie, who is, 11 to 21, and we have Brooklyn, who's 8 to 18, and we have Jonathan, who's 5 to 15. Like, of any of the decades of our life, this one for our relationship with our kids is just going to be huge and very like impactful on their lives, and will set the tone for the rest of our lives. And it's going to be a very kid focused decade, very family focused decade. And, the decade after that will be a little different. And we try to look ahead to that and understand that, the things that, we're going to, the kids are going to take a ton of energy in this next decade, but then after that, they're going to take a lot less, and we're going to miss these times. So it's us writing down these like goals, or even these just acknowledgments of what season of life we're in, gives us a path of some sort that helps us align our goals, that then, helps us deal with almost everything. I mean, that helps us in an argument. It's like, well, this is a shared goal of ours that we agreed on. Like, so I feel, that's where I can be like, I feel like what you're saying is against what we agreed on as a goal. And, or like, I feel like what, even this, like what our parents are saying is against our goal. We've agreed on this goal. So it gives like a shared shared vision or narrative for where we want to go with our life.
Yeah, I love that you said that it brings in the partnership aspect. I think that's so true. It helps us be on the same team.
Yeah, and so again, that's where like, and through some talks with some other people, right? Like that's come up with like, where it was like, I forget, but one of them was really frustrated with how the husband was really frustrated with how the wife's spending her time during the day, and it was like, we were able to help them maybe unpack what that actually could look like. The time that she was spending with the kids was going to produce, emotional and relational benefits, later on. And that was kind of a light bulb for him of like, oh yeah, I get it. Like that's, a reframing of actual, kind of alignment in the long term, midterm, and short term goals of your life is very powerful, and just eliminating a lot of strife.
Yeah.
And it charts a course. I mean, that's how we've gotten to where we are.
I think it also helps you see how the Lord has blessed you, and makes you just so thankful. I think
when you see
written
happen
out goals, and then you see, like, for instance, Bend was one of our goals, and having a house with property was one of our goals. And I never really actually thought that those things would really happen. I think we just wrote it down kind of as a dream, but then to see it happen and just realize like, wow, he's such a good father to give us things that we don't necessarily deserve, but he likes to bless us with. I just think it really increased my faith and increased even my Thanksgiving. Yeah. Yeah. So it plays into your life as a whole, not just in your marriage. But yeah, do you have any final thoughts?
I think, no, I don't really think so. I think the thing just to cap off would be looking back through whatever, all 4 or 5 of these videos. It's just that, one thing we said early on was just, you have to, approach your spouse not as an extension of yourself, but as their own person, and your partner in building this life together. And what you do for them, you do for yourself and for your kids. And so the investment that you put into them, you're putting into yourself in your life. I think the other thing too, the other element of that, on that point actually, is the element of sacrifice. And I think Jordan Peterson actually is one of my favorite authors, puts it the best. And that's that it seemed, throughout the Bible, multiple different times, there's this concept of bargaining with the future. And that is that when you sacrifice your own wants and your own needs, or whatever you're wanting in the present moment, for a future benefit, it always pays off. If you see that in the Old Testament with Abraham, you see that when Jesus is tempted in the desert by the devil, the devil says, I will give you, all the kingdoms of the earth if you just, bow down. All the tests that Jesus was put through, and yet he always chose to make the sacrifice in the moment for the future benefit. And it's such a powerful tenet that seems to be universal. And so sacrificing for your wife and for your husband and sacrificing for your kids for the future benefit will always come back to pay dividends. And I think that's another just tenet that we have in our marriage of that goes along with the goal setting of what do we need to sacrifice in the moment, or what do I need to sacrifice? For instance, you've sacrificed a lot alongside me with growing BlackRock to where it is now, to be in 8 states and to be the size of a company it is, and to have 1,200 employees and all that. And, I try to sacrifice for you when you want to go to school to be a counselor, or when you want to write a book, or when you need time for Awaken and to do these things. So like that tenet of sacrifice and bargaining with the future, it always pays dividends. It always wins. And so when you do that, and I think that's another just thing, an element of our partnership that's super helpful, because I think people get stuck in the moment. And when you look at the larger story of your life, at least for me, it's always just, it looks really apparent of just how true that really is. Just, to not get stuck on the struggles of the moment, but to zoom out a bit and like look to the future. And like you said, look to the past, look how you have been blessed, look how you've grown, look how your spouse has grown, it's a flow. I think that's the more things that you can do and incorporate all the things we've talked about that set up a natural flow of your marriage, then all of the other things seem to get easier. Like when you have this flow, and hurts bounce off you more easily, and goals, unfold before you, and how you treat one another. And, it all gets easier because it's all flowing the same direction of 2 individual people loving and owning the full person of each other, building a life together. And like that, when that flow is in place, then again, it takes on a very kind of, just lack of a better word, just kind of a sweet, like it's like being in the river, just going with the current. And it's all the things we've talked about all mashed together that I think kind of build that flow, that river.
Yeah, it's good. I like that thought. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for coming along with us on this journey, and hope you have a great day. See you back here at Awaken Life. Bye.